On our first date, she tricked me into coming to her friend's birthday dinner so I could pay for their expensive orders. I never thought I'd have a worst first date story. I always considered myself a decent judge of character, someone who could read between smiles and detect red flags before they turned into full-blown disasters. But that night? That night humbled me in ways I still laugh and cringe about. It started innocently enough. Her name was Talia. We matched on a dating app one Thursday afternoon. Her profile wasn't overdone like most, just a few simple photos, a bright smile, and a bio that read, "I love spontaneous plans and people who can make me laugh until I forget what I was mad about." We hit it off immediately. She was funny, charming, and knew how to keep a conversation alive. Within an hour, we'd swapped numbers. By evening, she'd suggested we meet up over the weekend. "There's this new restaurant downtown I've been dying to try," she texted. "Sounds great," I replied. "Saturday?" "Perfect," she added a winky face emoji. "I'll text you the address that morning." I didn't think much of the winky face. I thought she was just being playful. But in hindsight, that little emoji should have been my first clue. Saturday came. Around 4 p.m., she texted. "Hey, can we meet at 6 instead of 7? My friend's birthday dinner is happening at this nice restaurant called Milo's Place. It's super fun, and after they're done, we can go for our date after. You cool with that?" I hesitated. A birthday dinner? On our first date? But I told myself not to overthink. Maybe it was just a quick thing. Besides, she sounded excited to see me. "Sure," I texted back. "I don't mind waiting till you're done." "Your sweet pleading face," she replied. "Actually, you can join us. My friends are really chill. It'll be fun." That was red flag number 2. I arrived at Milo's Place a few minutes before 6. It was a beautiful upscale restaurant, the kind that had valet parking and soft jazz playing near the entrance. I wore my best jacket, trying to strike a balance between casual and classy. Talia walked in about 10 minutes later, and yes, she looked amazing. Beautiful curls bouncing over her shoulders, a red dress that made heads turn, and confidence in every step. "Hey," she greeted, giving me a light hug. "You look even better in person." She smelled like vanilla and something expensive. We walked in together, and I followed her to the back of the restaurant, where a large table of about 8 people was already seated. Everyone turned when they saw her. "Talia," they screamed. "You made it." She introduced me casually. "Guys, this is Jordan. He's a friend." A friend. No mention of date. No hint of romance. Just a vague introduction that made me instantly feel like an outsider. Still, I smiled and waved. "Hey, nice to meet everyone." They barely looked up. The conversation was chaos. Everyone at the table was talking over one another, inside jokes, gossip, laughter that excluded me at every turn. Talia was in her element, laughing, drinking, taking selfies. I sat quietly, sipping my water, waiting for a moment to catch her attention. Finally, I leaned toward her and whispered, "So, how long are we staying here before our date?" She smiled like I'd just told a joke. "Oh, don't worry, babe. We'll go out after dinner. Just relax and have fun." Babe. Another confusing label. Then the waiter arrived to take orders. Everyone ordered appetizers, entrees, and expensive cocktails like they were being offered for free. I ordered a simple pasta and lemonade, trying not to look cheap but also not ready to drop hundreds on a night that wasn't supposed to be mine to host. Halfway through dinner, her friend, the birthday girl, started doing shots. The rest followed. Soon, bottles were popping, laughter was louder, and I was invisible. At one point, Talia grabbed my arm and said, "Ah, you're so quiet. Are you having fun?" I'm fine, I said flatly. Just wasn't expecting a crowd. She smiled and kissed me on the cheek. You're so sweet for coming. Seriously. You're the best. That moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, this would turn around. 2 hours later, dessert was done. The table was covered in half-empty glasses, napkins, and laughter that had turned sloppy. Then came that moment. The waiter placed the bill folder in the center of the table. Silence. No one moved for a good 30 seconds. Then, as if on cue, everyone started looking at me. Talia gave me this playful nudge and said, "You don't mind covering this, right, Jordan? You said you wanted to treat me tonight." My stomach dropped. "I said I'd cover our dinner," I replied slowly. Her friend, the birthday girl, laughed. "Come on, big guy. Don't ruin the vibe." Another guy at the table chimed in, "Yeah, man, it's her birthday. Be a gentleman." 8 pairs of eyes. All on me. I glanced at Talia. She just smiled like this was a test of how far she could push. The bill was $612.84. I swear, I stared at it long enough for the numbers to blur. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice calm but firm. I didn't agree to pay for everyone's meal. The mood at the table shifted immediately. Her friends whispered among themselves. One even muttered, "Wow, broke energy." Talia gave me a cold look. "Are you serious right now? You're really gonna make a scene over dinner?" "No," I replied. "But I'm not paying for people I don't know." I stood up, placed $40 on the table for my pasta and drink, and added, "This covers mine." The birthday girl gasped. "Oh my God, is he serious?" Talia glared at me. "Jordan, sit down. You're embarrassing me." "No, you embarrassed me," I said quietly. "Good luck figuring out the bill." And I walked out. As I walked past the restaurant entrance, my phone buzzed. 10 missed messages from Talia. Wow. Really mature. You could have just paid and we'd settle it later. You made me look bad in front of my friends. Never text me again. I didn't reply. At that moment, I laughed out loud. I wasn't angry anymore, just disappointed. I had gone from expecting a genuine first date to realizing I'd been used as a walking wallet. The cool night air hit my face as I stepped towards my car. I loosened my collar, shaking my head in disbelief. The laughter from inside still echoed faintly through the glass doors behind me. Then I heard a voice. "Hey, wait up." I turned around. A woman was jogging after me, heels clicking against the pavement. She wasn't Talia. She was one of the women from the table, quiet, reserved, sitting at the far end during dinner. I hadn't caught her name earlier because Talia's introductions were half-hearted, and the conversation never gave me a chance. She stopped in front of me, slightly out of breath. "I'm sorry about what just happened in there." Her tone wasn't defensive or fake. It was sincere. "I shouldn't have stayed quiet when they started pressuring you," she continued. "That wasn't fair. You were blindsided." I sighed, my frustration softening. "Yeah, it was weird. I didn't expect to be the evening's entertainment and wallet at once." She gave a small, knowing smile. "That's Talia for you. She's nice sometimes, but she likes to test people." I raised an eyebrow. "Test people or use them?" That made her laugh. "Touché." There was a short silence, then she extended her hand. "I'm Renee, by the way. I didn't get a chance to introduce myself properly." "Jordan," I said, shaking her hand. "I know," she smiled. "Talia mentioned you all week." I think she was actually nervous about this date, she just didn't handle it the right way. By dragging me into a group dinner and expecting me to pay? I said, half laughing. Renee grinned. Yeah, that part was definitely wrong. She walked me to my car, and we talked for a few more minutes. It was easy. Comfortable. She was calm, direct, and nothing like the chaos I just walked away from. Before leaving, she said, I know this isn't the best first impression, but, don't let tonight define how you see all of us. Not everyone at that table agreed with her. I smiled. I figured that much. You were the only one who didn't say anything. I was embarrassed for you, she admitted softly. And honestly, for her too. There was a pause. She hesitated, then asked, would it be weird if I asked for your number? Just in case you ever want to have a real dinner, one without an audience or a test. For the first time that night, I actually smiled. I think I'd like that. We exchanged numbers, and she left with a little wave before heading back inside. That night, I saw Talia's post on Instagram. Ladies, always test them early. If he can't handle a dinner, he can't handle you. Woman shrugging medium skin tone # lesson learned. The comments were filled with "Yas Queen" and "period." It was pathetic. Renee and I started talking a few days later. At first, it was just friendly texts, checking in, sharing memes, joking about that ridiculous dinner. But conversations grew longer. Calls started happening at night. She'd tell me about her job as a paralegal, her dog named Biscuit, and how she'd been friends with Talia since college but had grown distant recently. She's complicated, Renee once said. Always trying to prove something. She thinks the world owes her nice things because she's been through bad ones. I didn't say anything. I didn't hate Talia, I just didn't trust her anymore. One night, Renee asked directly. So, did you and Talia ever officially date, or was that night your only hangout? That night was the first, and last, I said. Honestly, I thought it was a date. But she introduced me as a friend like I was a random +1. Renee sighed. Yeah, I noticed. She shouldn't have done that. You were clearly interested, and she took advantage of it. Well, I said, smiling slightly, I'm glad one good thing came out of that disaster. And what's that? She asked. Meeting you. There was silence, followed by a soft laugh. You're smooth, Jordan. About 3 weeks later, I got a text from an unknown number. Wow. So you're dating Renee now? It was Talia. I just stared at the screen. I hadn't told her, we hadn't told anyone. Apparently, someone from the group must have seen us when Renee and I went out to brunch that weekend. I replied, we're friends. We just get along. She fired back almost instantly. You really think she's innocent? She's always had a thing for my guys. Typical. I laughed to myself. Your guys? I typed. You made it clear I was just a friend. No reply. Over the next few months, Renee and I became inseparable. We started seeing each other more often, movies, walks, cooking together. She was the opposite of Talia in every way, low drama, genuine, thoughtful. She never asked for fancy gifts or expensive dinners. In fact, she once laughed when I tried to surprise her with a pricey restaurant reservation. No way, she said. I still owe you dinner for that night. Let me cook instead. And she did. Homemade lasagna, garlic bread, and a bottle of cheap red wine that somehow tasted perfect. As we sat across from each other at her kitchen table, she said something I'll never forget. You know what's funny? If Talia hadn't tried to trick you, we probably wouldn't have met. I smiled. That's one way to turn a scam into a blessing. She reached across the table, took my hand, and said softly, I think sometimes life embarrasses us on purpose, just to lead us to the right person. For months, everything between Renee and me was easy, simple. We weren't rushing anything, but we were steady, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in something real. Then, as life always does, drama decided to come knocking again. And this time, it came wearing perfume, red lipstick, and a grudge the size of a mountain. It started with a text. Renee showed me her phone one evening while we were cooking dinner. "Talia, we need to talk." Girl to girl. Renee frowned. "Here we go." "Renee, about what?" "Talia, you know what. Meet me tomorrow at Café Bloom. Noon." I told her she didn't owe Talia a conversation. But Renee wasn't the type to hide. She'd always believed in clearing the air, no matter how ugly it might get. "If I ignore her, she'll twist the story," Renee said. "It's better I face her head on." I nodded. "Want me to come with you?" She smiled, shaking her head. "No. I'll handle it." The next day, Renee walked into Café Bloom, a small, bright cafe that smelled like roasted beans and lavender syrup. Talia was already there, sitting by the window, sunglasses perched on her head, phone in hand. Her expression was unreadable. Renee sat across from her, calm but cautious. "Okay," Renee said. "You wanted to talk. What's this about?" Talia looked up, her voice dripping with controlled fury. "You really thought I wouldn't find out? You and Jordan?" Renee took a sip of her coffee. "You introduced him as a friend, Talia. You made it very clear that you weren't interested." "That's not the point." Talia snapped. "He was supposed to be my date. You went behind my back." Renee blinked. "Your date? You humiliated him in front of everyone, expected him to pay for your entire table, and called him a friend when he got there." Talia's voice rose. "I was testing him. You knew that." Renee set her cup down slowly. "Testing him? For what? To see how much he'd let you use him?" That hit a nerve. Talia leaned forward, eyes flashing. "You always do this. You wait around, play the sweet friend, then swoop in the moment something good comes my way. You can't get your own man, so you take mine." Renee laughed under her breath. "Your man? You made him a prop for your little show. You only wanted him for his wallet." Talia slammed her hand on the table. "You're a snake, Renee. A backstabber." The cafe went quiet. A few heads turned. But Renee didn't flinch. She stood, grabbed her purse, and said, "If standing up for someone you tried to humiliate makes me a backstabber, then so be it." Then she walked out, leaving Talia fuming alone at the table. By that evening, the group chat was on fire. Screenshots started flying, stories twisted, voices raised. Talia had gotten to the rest of the friend group first. "Talia, Renee stole my man. After everything I did for her, she went behind my back. You can't trust girls like her." Within hours, the group had turned on Renee. Old friends stopped replying to her texts. Inside jokes vanished. She was removed from their group chat without warning. When she told me, her voice was steady, but her eyes said otherwise. "They called me a backstabber, Jordan. People I've known since college. Just because I wouldn't play along with her lies." I reached across and took her hand. "You did nothing wrong. You stood up for what was right." She smiled faintly. "Yeah, but it still hurts." Then one evening, I got a random text. "Hey stranger, remember me?" It was Talia. "I just wanted to say sorry for that night. I shouldn't have put you in that situation. I was trying to impress my friends and it got out of hand." I read it twice. "Apology accepted," I replied. "But that's not the kind of person I want to be around." She sent a sad emoji, followed by, "Can I make it up to you? Dinner on me?" I didn't reply. Instead, I smiled, blocked her from and went back to enjoying my quiet Friday night, with my God-given girlfriend, at peace, and a little wiser. A few weeks later, word got around that Talia's own circle had started to fracture. Apparently, her stunt with me wasn't her first test. She'd done similar things before, bringing men around her friends just to see who would betray her. Renee's story had spread, and this time, people weren't buying Talia's version. One friend told another, then another, and slowly, the truth came out. Talia lost most of her closest friends. The few who stayed only did so out of habit, not loyalty. Meanwhile, Renee and I grew stronger. One night, as we were watching a movie, Renee chuckled softly and said, "You know what's funny? If she hadn't tried to make you pay that night, none of this would have happened." I laughed. "She accidentally played matchmaker." "Exactly," she said, resting her head on my shoulder. "She lost her little test, but I gained something real." It had been 2 years since that chaotic night at Milo's place, the night that was supposed to humiliate me, but instead led me straight to the woman I wanted to spend my life with. Renee. The woman who followed me out when everyone else stayed silent. The woman who stood up for me when I didn't even ask her to. The woman who turned a humiliating evening into the beginning of something worth every lesson I'd learned before her. And now, it was time. I'd been planning it for months, something intimate, honest, and poetic. No crowd, no cameras hidden in bushes, no fake surprise with 100 people clapping. Just her and me, where it all began. So I chose Milo's place. The same restaurant where she first saw me humiliated, where she followed me outside into the night, where our story had unknowingly started. I called ahead and reserved the same corner table near the window, the one farthest from the noise. I spoke to the manager, told him my story, and he smiled like he'd heard hundreds of love stories but none quite like this one. "You want it to be perfect," he said. "Leave it to us. We'll make sure she never forgets this night." Renee thought it was just an anniversary dinner. She wore a simple navy dress, hair down in waves, eyes sparkling like they always did when she saw me. "You're smiling too much," she teased as we drove. "What are you hiding?" "Nothing," I said, trying to play it cool. "Maybe I'm just happy to be with you." She rolled her eyes. "You always say that when you're planning something." When we walked into Milo's place, she stopped at the entrance. Her gaze scanned the room, then landed on our table, decorated with candles and a single red rose in the center. She looked at me, her eyes narrowing. "Jordan, why here?" I smiled. "Because this is where our story started. And I thought it was time to rewrite how it ended that night." As we sat down, the waiter handed us menus printed with a custom heading. A second chance to make the first memory right. Renee laughed softly, covering her mouth. "You really did this?" "I had to," I said. "You deserve a memory that outshines the old one." Dinner went beautifully. The food, the music, the lighting, it all felt like the universe had decided to give us a perfect night as a reward for surviving the chaos we'd come from. Halfway through dessert, I reached under the table and felt the small box in my pocket. My heart started to pound. Then I saw her staring at me with a knowing smile. "You're acting weird," she said. "You keep checking your pocket." "What are you?" I didn't let her finish. I stood up, walked around to her side of the table, and got down on one knee. The restaurant went quiet, soft music, clinking glasses, faint gasps from nearby tables. Renee's hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide and glistening. "Renee," I began, voice steady but my heart racing. 2 years ago, I walked into this restaurant thinking I was going on a date. I ended up walking out embarrassed, disappointed, and ready to give up on the idea of good people. I took her hand gently. "But then, you followed me. You didn't know me, you didn't owe me anything, but you chose kindness when everyone else chose silence. You turned my worst date into the beginning of the best story of my life." Her eyes filled with tears. I continued, "You've shown me what loyalty looks like, what peace feels like, and what love actually means when it's real. So now, I want to ask you something simple. I pulled the ring box from my pocket and opened it. Will you marry me, Renee? There was silence for a second. Then she laughed through her tears. Jordan, you really brought me back to Milo's place to do this? Full circle, I grinned. No tricks this time. She covered her face, nodded, and whispered through tears, yes. The restaurant erupted into quiet applause. The staff smiled, and someone even sent over champagne on the house. Renee leaned into me, still crying and laughing. You just turned the worst night of your life into the best night of mine. I kissed her forehead. Guess it all worked out in the end. Just as we were finishing our champagne, I noticed a familiar face by the entrance, Talia. She froze when she saw us. Our eyes met. She hesitated, then gave a small, bittersweet smile before quietly walking back out the door. No drama this time. No confrontation. Just a silent acceptance that the story had moved on, and so had we. Renee saw her too but didn't say a word. She just reached for my hand and squeezed it. And in that moment, I realized something. Sometimes closure doesn't come in words or revenge. Sometimes it comes in peace. A year later, we were married in a small ceremony by the lake. No drama, no tests, no games, just laughter, family, and love. When we said our vows, Renee added her own line that made everyone laugh. To think, all it took was one bad dinner and one good man. I smiled back and said, and one quiet woman who saw through the noise. Because that's how love found us, not in perfection, but in the mess that tried to break us. And every anniversary, we still go back to Milo's place. Not because of what happened there, but because of what came after. The end. Please show your support by subscribing, liking and commenting. Thanks.